Hey guys, let's do a pregnancy bump update. So I am now, get this baby out of me, weeks along. The baby is the size of a whale and what sounds like at least 5 painful stitches. My main symptom is big.
The 26-year-old mother you see here, glowing, smiling, expectant, and full of excitement as she talks about how she can't wait to finally meet her baby boy. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. But what no one could have imagined was that she and her unborn son would be shot dead on her due date. At around 5 a.m., police would respond to a 911 call at her Cincinnati apartment. Inside, police would uncover a scene so devastating, it left an entire community shaken. They found her lifeless body had been shot multiple times, her unborn son gone with her. And the most chilling part? Her 6-year-old son had witnessed everything. As detectives searched for answers, the truth behind this crime would devastate those closest to her. The killer wasn't hidden far away. It was someone much closer than anyone could have imagined. This tragedy brings to mind another heartbreaking story we've covered, about a 25-year-old teacher whose life was cut short in the most unthinkable way. She had just shared the joy of her pregnancy, only to be shot days later.
Extremely proud of her. That even in her last moments, she was strong.
He shot her like she was a dog. And I wouldn't even do that to a dog.
If you missed it, that story is linked at the end. It's eerily familiar. Now, let's look at the life and tragic death of India Kenmore.
He was hiding up under his covers and he said, "Netta, come. Somebody, my mommy and somebody broke in her house." He said, "I'm scared. I'm so scared. My mommy's screaming."
26-year-old India Kenmore was born in 1996 and grew up surrounded by family, love, and laughter. By all accounts, she was bright, fun-loving, and creative. Someone with an infectious personality that lifted others up. Friends remembered her as the type of person who could instantly make everyone feel cared for. At the age of 20, she welcomed her first son, Zai, into the world on April 13th, 2016. From the moment he was born, India devoted her life to him. In a heartfelt birthday post for Zai, she admitted that she had been scared when she first found out that she was pregnant with him. She thought she was supposed to finish school, be married, and be financially stable before becoming a mom. But despite her fears, she said that God had other plans for them, and she embraced motherhood wholeheartedly. India poured her love into Zai, often writing about how much joy he brought into her life. She said that hearing him call her mommy every day gave her strength and purpose. Those close to her say Zai was her entire world, and she never missed an opportunity to remind him how deeply he was loved. Over the years, India grew into her role as a mother with pride. She worked hard to provide for Zai, balancing responsibilities while also nurturing his curiosity and dreams. She wanted him to have every opportunity in life, often expressing her hope that he would grow up knowing he could accomplish anything he set his mind to. Outside of being a devoted mother, India was described as someone full of life. She enjoyed nights out with friends, loved cooking, and had a passion for good food and good company. Even though she was petite, she had a big appetite and was known as a foodie among her circle. And family was at the center of her world. India was close to her parents and siblings, sharing a bond with them that was more like best friends than relatives. She was especially close to her cousin, Jayla. The two grew up side by side and were inseparable. Sadly, in November 2021, India would experience a devastating heartbreak. Jayla was killed by a drunk driver. India wrote about how dark and painful that loss was, saying that life felt strange without her cousin and partner in crime by her side. The tragedy shook her deeply, but in the midst of her grief, she would soon discover that she was carrying new life. India became pregnant again, this time with a man named Kayvon Warren. From the outside, Kayvon appeared to be a good family man. He was 30 years old, from Cincinnati, Ohio. He was also a father of 2 children from a previous relationship and worked steadily at Bosch Automotive. He even had side hustles like hosting sip and paint events for adults and children. Raised mostly by his mother and grandmother, Kayvon often spoke about how much he respected strong women and how grateful he was for the lessons they taught him. He was described as a hands-on dad to his 2 older children, celebrating milestones and showing up for birthdays. To those who knew him, he seemed dependable, responsible, and even admirable. So, when India became pregnant, there wasn't much reason to think that anything would go wrong. But behind closed doors, not everything was as it seemed. At first, India herself admitted she wasn't sure about having another child. She once said that if someone had asked her a year earlier whether she wanted more kids, she would have said no. But as the pregnancy progressed, she embraced it with open arms. She began documenting her journey on social media, talking about the ups and downs, the cravings, the discomfort, but most of all, the joy of knowing she was about to meet her baby boy. But Kayvon, on the other hand, was less enthusiastic. At one point, he posted that he needed information on how to get a vasectomy as quickly as possible, a remark that made it clear he was not excited about another child. But to the outside world, India's life looked like it was picture perfect. She posted TikToks with humor, saying she felt like the baby inside her was the size of a whale and that she was ready for the pregnancy to be over.
So I am now, get this baby out of me, weeks along. The baby is the size of a whale and what sounds like at least 5 painful stitches.
Her maternity photo shoot with Kayvon showed him smiling for the camera, projecting the image of a supportive father-to-be. What no one realized at the time was that those photos and smiles were just a facade. On March 4th, 2023, India was supposed to finally meet her son. She had posted online that she was emotional and ready, knowing it could happen any time soon. She couldn't wait for Zai to step into his new role as a big brother, a role she knew he would embrace with love and pride. But just hours before she was set to be induced, tragedy struck. At around 5 a.m., officers were called to the Hidden Meadows apartments. Neighbors had reported hearing gunfire, but nothing could have prepared officers for what they found inside. Inside the apartment, India lay in her living room, shot multiple times. She was pronounced dead at the scene. With her passing, her unborn son also lost his life. What should have been a day of celebration turned into one of unimaginable grief.
Police have identified a pregnant woman in Coleraine Township early this morning. Her name is India Kinnamore. Police say the 26-year-old was shot just before 5 this morning on Hidden Meadows Drive off Hamilton Avenue. They say Kinnamore was in the late stages of her pregnancy. The baby also died. Police have not said anything about a suspect or any arrests in the case.
However, the most shocking revelation was yet to come. India's 6-year-old son Zai had witnessed the horror, all of it. He heard his mother scream as she was shot, and in his innocence, he ran to his grandmother, Terry, pleading for help. He told her that someone had been shooting inside their home and that his mommy was lying on the floor. The weight of that memory is something no child should ever carry. But police at first had little to go on. There was no weapon found at the scene, no immediate suspect identified, and no clear motive. India had no known enemies, no conflicts that could explain why someone would want her dead, especially not on the very day she was set to bring life into the world. Her loved ones were left devastated, trying to make sense of the senseless. Her mother, Terry, stepped in to care for Zai, the little boy who had not only lost his mother but had been forced to witness her final moments. Terry described how, on the surveillance audio from the apartment, you could hear her grandson screaming every time his mother was shot. But what struck her the most was what you didn't hear.
He was hiding up under his covers and he said, "Nana, come. Somebody, my mommy, and somebody broke in our house." He said, "I'm scared. I'm so scared. My mommy's screaming."
She said not once did you hear Kayvon, India's boyfriend and the father of her unborn child, react in any way. He didn't shout in shock, he didn't ask what was happening, and he didn't cry out for help. This absence of concern would later become one of the biggest red flags in the case. But at the time, no one suspected Kayvon. In fact, he played the role of a grieving partner convincingly. Just 2 weeks after the murders, he attended India's funeral, standing beside her family as they buried both her and baby Kyren, at Spring Grove Cemetery on March 18, 2023. Not only that, on social media, he posted about how broken he was. He shared pictures from their maternity shoot, ultrasound images, and memories of their relationship. He wrote about missing them, about not believing they were gone, and about how his heart was shattered. Friends and acquaintances offered sympathy, flooding the posts with heart emojis and prayers. But prosecutors would later argue that these public displays of grief were nothing more than an act, a mask hiding his true involvement. In the days after India Kinmore's murder, shock and grief consumed the Cincinnati community. Candlelight vigils were held in her honor, with loved ones describing her as a devoted mother whose life revolved around her children. Friends and neighbors struggled to make sense of how a 9-month pregnant woman could be so brutally targeted on the very day she was supposed to bring life into the world. Her mother, Terry, became one of the loudest voices for justice, refusing to let her daughter's case fade into silence. She organized community marches, spoke at press conferences, and pleaded with investigators to not give up. As detectives worked tirelessly to piece together the timeline, one haunting question echoed throughout the city. Who would kill a woman 9 months pregnant, just hours before she was meant to give birth? Despite the heartbreak, rumors began swirling in the community. People whispered about India's troubled relationship with Kayvon, the father of her unborn child. Some believed he was grieving, while others quietly suspected that he knew more than he was letting on. Still, with no evidence strong enough to press charges, police were forced to wait, and the family was forced to endure years of uncertainty. For 2 years, the case remained unsolved. Police assured the public that the investigation was moving in the right direction, but with no arrests, India's family felt like justice was slipping further and further away.
Yeah, that's right, guys. And we spoke with a representative from the Coleraine Township Police Department behind me here who says there's not much that they can say publicly about the case at this point, but he does tell me that investigators in their process, they're moving forward. They're headed in the right direction with this as they continue to follow up on leads. And while that happens, we're hearing from a woman who says she's been a longtime friend of India Kinnemore, and she's struggling with the news of her death.
Meanwhile, Kayvon, on the other hand, continued living freely. He worked his job, spent time with his other children, and never left town. To outsiders, he looked like a man trying to move forward while grieving a tragic loss. But behind the scenes, investigators were piecing together a different story, one that would take everyone by surprise. Detectives would uncover something that changed everything. They found digital evidence, cell phone records, deleted messages, and location data that painted a chilling picture. Prosecutors later revealed that these records showed communication between 3 men, all connected to Kayvon, discussing a plan to kill India before she could give birth. The motive, however, was even more horrifying than anyone imagined. Kayvon did not want another child. He had pushed for India to terminate the pregnancy, but when she refused and embraced motherhood, he decided to end both her life and the baby's. The crime wasn't random at all. It was calculated, and it wasn't carried out alone. Investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, Kayvon allegedly left the back door of the apartment unlocked so his accomplices could get inside. Messages between him, 20-year-old Robert Irvin, and 22-year-old Lamar Suggs showed a coordinated plan. Robert's phone records and vehicle data placed him near the crime scene at the time of the shooting, while Lamar, already serving time on an unrelated weapons charge, was identified as the alleged gunman. But something else was more chilling. It was the timing. India was killed just hours before she was supposed to leave for the hospital for an inducement. Prosecutors argued that this wasn't coincidental, it was intentional. They believed Kayvon wanted to make sure she never made it to that delivery room. On August 21st, 2025, 2.5 years after India's death, police finally made arrests. Kayvon Warren, Robert Irvin, and Lamar Suggs were all charged with 2 counts of murder, one for India and one for baby Kyron.
3 men are facing murder charges for 26-year-old India Kinnamore and her unborn child. Thanks for joining us here at 5:30. I'm Ashley Kirkland.
And I'm Chris Jacobs. The 2023 shooting happened in Coleraine Township, and WLWT News 5's Danielle Dendak has been covering this case from the beginning. And Danielle, two of the men charged were arraigned today, and India's mother was also there.
The news sent chills through the Cincinnati community. For India's family, it was a moment of mixed emotions. Relief that the suspects had been identified and arrested, but devastation that the betrayal had come from the very man who should have been her protector. Terry, India's mother, said she once thought Kayvon was a nice, upstanding man. But now, she said, she realized he was the complete opposite, a monster.
I thought that Kayvon was a nice, upstanding gentleman, and he turned out to be a complete opposite, a monster. Because only a monster would do something like this.
Meanwhile, the court revealed more about the evidence. Text messages showed the men coordinating on the night of the murder. Surveillance audio captured India's screams as she was shot, her son's cries, and the eerie silence of Kayvon, who did nothing. And while his public image was that of a grieving partner, prosecutors argued that his private actions told the real story.
I got the phone call from my grandson to say my mommy has been
26-year-old India Kinnamore was pregnant.
Scheduled to be induced the same morning as the murder.
It would take almost 2.5 years for charges to come. 3 men, 20-year-old Robert Irving, 30-year-old Kayvon Warren, and 22-year-old Lamar Morris Suggs.
Conspiring to come up with this plan to Miss Kinnabrew and her unborn child.
Irving and Warren spent their Friday morning in front of a judge. Inside this courtroom, we learned the fatal family ties.
Mr. Warren was involved in a relationship with the victim. The victim was pregnant, and that at some point the evidence that has been uncovered was that he wanted her to terminate that pregnancy.
By the way, they don't say he's a shooter. They claim that there's a conspiracy. They claim that Lamar Suggs is a shooter. Give him a high bond.
But this fierce mom had words for Warren.
I don't think he should see the light of day until this case is solved. That's what I would ask of this court.
But there was one problem. Kayvon's defense team argued that the evidence was circumstantial. His lawyer pointed out that he had no prior criminal record, had cooperated with investigators during the investigation, never left town, and his life as a working father. They claimed he had nothing to gain from India's death, arguing instead that he loved her and wanted his son. They claimed he was guilty only by association. Still, the prosecution emphasized the surveillance audio, India's terrified screams, Zai crying out, and the chilling silence from Kayvon. For India's family, that silence was the loudest evidence of all. The community, too, reacted with outrage and grief. Neighbors at Hidden Meadows set up a memorial filled with flowers, candles, and stuffed animals. Hundreds attended vigils, remembering India not just as a victim, but as a vibrant young woman with a bright smile and a heart full of love. At Spring Grove Cemetery, her family laid her and baby Kyron to rest in a shared grave. The funeral was devastating. 2 lives gone, one coffin carrying both the young mother and the child she never got to hold. Her son Zai clung to his grandmother, still processing the trauma of what he had seen and heard. Terry described the unbearable pain of explaining to a 6-year-old why his mother wasn't coming back. She said he often cried, asking for her, reliving the night he heard her screams. Now under her care, she promised to raise him with the love and guidance his mother would have wanted. Meanwhile, prosecutors revealed more about the other 2 suspects. Robert Irvin, just 20 years old, was accused of coordinating the attack. His car and phone placed him near the apartment, and his calls showed communication with both Kayvon and Lamar. He was held on a $300,000 bond. And as for Lamar Suggs, the alleged gunman who was already in prison on unrelated charges, prosecutors said his role as the shooter was established through his phone records and coordination with the others. His bail conditions haven't been publicly disclosed.
Now, the alleged gunman, he was not in court today. He's currently being locked up at the Ohio Department of Corrections on an unrelated felony charge. We're, of course, going to continue following all three of these cases as they make their way through the court system.
The case is moving through the courts, and all three men have been indicted on multiple counts, including aggravated murder, burglary, and felony assault. They all face life sentences if convicted. India's life mattered. Baby Kyron's life mattered. And they both should still be here today. My deepest condolences go out to India's family and loved ones. May you find strength in her memory and comfort in knowing that her story will never be forgotten. What do you think about this? Let us know what you think in the comments below, and if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.